टाइम पे जब मैं लाइब्रेरी को लिंक करता हूं मेरे कोड के साथ, से आई एम यूजिंग हैश include conio.h or stdio.h or iostream.h into my program, or some header file that user has written, including that header file, I can associate the requisite code which is pre-compiled. I can link that code with my program at the link time. So we talked about this, what is link time. So linking time पे अगर मैं कुछ binding decisions लेता हूँ, they are referred to as link time binding decisions. Load time means when the program machine instructions are loaded into preprocessor. Okay, they are getting loaded into preprocessor. At that time, if I associate, so some decisions like in the memory, where exactly in the primary memory, where exactly my variable is going to get memory allocation for certain types of variable, that decision is taken when I am loading the data. Such variables are generally called as stack variable. Such variables are generally called as stack variable. If I have certain variables which are called as the static variables or global variables, they will get their names associated with the memory location. Okay, their names and their memory locations get an association created at the compile time. Now, many of the programming concepts, when it comes to an interpreter, they get their names associated at runtime, and that is where the association of the object and its name happens when you start executing the code. So if the name and its object का association execution होते हुए हो रहा है, that particular is referred to as runtime binding. You might have heard about this thing when you learn certain concepts in programming already. लेकिन आज हम लोग सीख रहे हैं कि ये बाइंडिंग होता क्या है, नेम और उसके ऑब्जेक्ट का एसोसिएशन एक साथ. ओके, सो जो ओवरलोडिंग का कंसेप्ट हमने आज सुबह देखा था, फंक्शन ओवरलोडिंग, दैट रिक्वायर्स माय प्रोग्राम to decide at the time of execution, okay, whether the value coming to it should be mapped to which of the three implementations. So you remember that there were three implementation of my function. Okay, I had three implementation. Those were like func func 1. Then there was another implementation, func2, and there was third implementation, func3. They differed with each other in the way they were prototyped. They differed from each other in the way they were prototyped, right? उनका दोनों का प्रोटोटाइप अलग था. What is a prototype of a function? फंक्शन का पैरामीटर का लिस्ट, उसका रिटर्न टाइप, इन दोनों का डेटा टाइप जो है वो हम लोग जो स्पेसिफाई करते हैं, दैट इज रेफर्ड टू एज प्रोटोटाइप ऑफ अ फंक्शन. ओके, फंक्शन का नाम with its return type and parameter list with respective data type is referred to as the prototype of a function. So what was different with these three functions that we had? Their names were same. Okay, they had same names. Okay, all the three had same names. Okay, they had different parameter, they had same count of parameters. Okay, what they were differing in? They were differing in type of parameters. Okay, parameter के type उनके अलग अलग थे. What else was the different? The return type was different. The return type was different with respect to all the three functions. Their name were same, but their count parameter, their name were same, parameter count was same, but the return type was different and the parameters के type जो थे वो भी अलग अलग थे. एक में int था, एक में float था या double था, और दूसरे में float int था. So first parameter was float, second parameter was int. Now the compiler can't take a decision when I write a code whether a particular call made will be associated with function 1, function 2, or function 3, because at the time of compilation maybe the parameters that I am passing, they are not computed, they are merely variables over there. Okay, so when I'm executing, I'm sure that whenever the function call is made, at the time of execution, I would know whether they are integer, whether they are character, whether they are float, whether they are double, the parameters that I'm passing, the formal arguments as they are referred to, sorry, actual arguments that as they are referred to, वो actual argument का data type क्या है, ये run time पे decide होगा, and run time पे मेरा function would know whether to invoke code for function 1, invoke code for function 2, invoke code for function 3. क्या करना है वो मुझे run time पे पता चलेगा. Now this association between the function and its execution is done at the runtime. Okay, so that is what we refer to as the runtime association or runtime binding or dynamic binding. Out of these different binding time decisions, all the binding time decisions that are done up to the compile time from left to right, we see that the decision regarding binding is taken place in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different time instances when I start using a programming language. Okay, तो ये जो सब है यहां से लेके 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all these are binding decisions that are statically binding decisions. Okay, even load तक के जो decision है वो भी statically binding decision और static binding decisions होते हैं. And finally the decisions of binding name with its object that is taken place at runtime is referred to as runtime binding or dynamic binding. So static binding, binding done up to compile, link and load, and the dynamic binding refers to runtime binding or binding done at execution of the code. Runtime means when the code is actually getting executed on a set of hardware. Okay, so that is the language design time binding explained to you, implementation time binding explained to you, program writing time, compile time binding. So we'll talk about compile time binding more. Compilers choose the mapping between high-level constructs to the machine code, including layout of statically defined data in the memory. So that is what the binding decisions that the compiler takes place, and that is compile time binding for you. Okay, next I guess is so linking and load time binding. So linker और loader क्या करते हैं? Linker chooses overall layout of modules with respect to one another and resolve the inter-module in references. So what is module? Module means आप अगर एक C program लिखते हो और दूसरा file उसके अंदर include करते हो, okay, I can include another C file into a C file. So I may have a variable declared in the file which I am referring to, and same variable name I can use in my code as well. So now since I'm including that file, तो मैं जब रेफर कर रहा हूँ किसी ऑब्जेक्ट को, किसी वेरिएबल को, तो वो कौन सा वेरिएबल है? इज द वेरिएबल फ्रॉम द अदर मॉड्यूल यानी अदर फाइल, और इज द वेरिएबल फ्रॉम द सेम फाइल और सेम मॉड्यूल? दैट डिसीजन इज टेकन केयर ऑफ एट द लिंकिंग प्रोसेस टाइम. सो जब आप लिंकिंग करते हो उस वक्त ये सब रिजॉल्व किया जाता है. सो द लिंक्ड कोड यू वोंट हैव एनी कंफ्यूजन फॉर योर processor to understand what variable you are referring to over there. Okay, when a name in one module refers to an object in another module, the binding between the two is not finalized until the link time. Link time तक वो binding finalize नहीं होता. आपको समझ में नहीं आएगा कि वो कौन से particular variable के साथ या value के साथ associated होता है. Early operating system, the choice of machine address for the objects within the program was not finalized till the load time. So this is actually about the operating systems that were dated back to, say, disk operating system, initial versions of Windows, initial versions of Unix, where the actual machine address mapping was done at load time. This is what exactly I said to you earlier as well in the discussion. Sorry for the background noise. Okay, most modern operating systems distinguish between virtual and physical addresses, and probably this is out of scope to understand what is a virtual address and what is a physical address. Just please understand the fact that physical address would be the actual memory location in which you are loading the code, and virtual address is some reference address that is used to refer to that memory location. So your for instance, if you see your roll number starts with 20. Okay, then it gives you a 01 character, and then there is actual roll number. So your actual roll number is, or the physical address is, those last 3 digits or last 2 digits. Since your class is of 60, last 2 digits will be your actual roll number or physical address in the roll number case, and rest of the thing is many descriptive attributes that describe that you belong to 2021 batch admission. 01 refers to you took admission in first year and you are not direct second year student, etc., etc. So that is the difference between virtual and physical address when it comes to computer memory and its utilization. So it's a concept which is beyond scope of our discussion right now, but you can remember that it is something like you have a physical address, actual place, and you have certain references to that place. Just like your house, if I ask you where you live, somebody can say I live in Kalyan, somebody will say that I live in Shivaji Chowk, somebody will say that I live just besides the statue of so and so person in this so and so chowk. Okay, so this particular way of referring to a same thing with different addresses is what virtual addressing allows us to do. Whereas physical addressing, वो जो लोकेशन हम लोग रेफर कर रहे हैं वो एक ही जगह पे होगा ना, उसका एक्चुअल एक एब्सोल्यूट एड्रेस होगा, and that absolute address is the physical address. Okay, so that is how I can actually explain you what is difference between a virtual memory address and a physical memory address. Okay, the binding of program object to the physical memory address is done at many times in linking time and load time. So load time and link time binding decisions are related to actually providing addresses to variables. तो आप बोलोगे जब मैं कंपाइल करता हूं तो मेरा वेरिएबल के साथ मैं अगर डिक्लेयर किया है int x is equal to 20, तो आप सर बोलते थे जब मैं कंपाइल करूंगा कोड तो देयर विल बी अ मेमोरी रिजर्व्ड फॉर से 4 बाइट्स, अगर इंटीजर है तो उसको एक नाम एसोसिएट होगा x और उसको एक वैल्यू एसोसिएट होगा. हाँ, ये सब होगा, लेकिन ये वर्चुअली हो रहा है, ये एक्चुअल फिजिकल मेमोरी में नहीं हो रहा है. आई एम वर्किंग ऑन अ मेमोरी मैप. जैसा आप पेपर पे मैप निकाल के उसके ऊपर लिख रहे हो अपना एड्रेस, वैसे ये सब डिसीजंस मेरा कंपाइलर लेके रखता है. तो मेरे मेमोरी में एक्स वेरिएबल यहाँ जाके बैठेगा, उसको इतना 4 बाइट का मेमोरी लोकेशन लगेगा. लेकिन फिजिकल मेमोरी में जब प्रोग्राम लोड होगा तो उस बड़े मेमोरी चंक में, मुझे मेरा प्राइमरी मेमोरी है सपोज 4 GB, तो वो 4 GB मेमोरी में कहाँ एक्चुअली जाके आपका वेरिएबल स्टोर होगा, वो डिसीजन लिंक या लोड टाइम पे आप लेते हो एज अ कंपाइलर. ओके, बिकॉज टुडे वी लुक एट कंपाइलर एज अ सिंगल यूनिट जो प्रोग्राम को ट्रांसलेट भी करता है, लिंक भी करता है, लोड भी करता है, and it gives you an executable which you can execute, which you can run on the physical machine. Okay, so that's why these decisions called as link and load time decisions, they are not that much away from the compile time decision in today's scenario, in today's world of computing. So compile time binding, link and load time binding, the three are kind of taking similar kind of decisions. Okay, finally this is runtime binding for you. It is the broad term referring to the span of execution of the code. Runtime का मतलब execution of code पे जो binding होता है वो. Okay, binding of values to variables. Variables को values associate होना, मैं expression को evaluate करता हूँ और value मुझे मिलता है, and then I associate that value to variable using assignment statement. ये execution time पे होता है. As do the host of other decisions that vary from programming language to language. Many different programming languages, different concepts, programming concepts are given their names, associated with their names at the binding runtime. Okay, runtime subsumes or assumes decisions at any of the following events. Program शुरू होते हुए जो आप binding करते हो, जब आप एक मॉड्यूल का एग्जीक्यूशन शुरू करते हो, at that time whatever binding you do. Elaboration time means when you are executing the subroutine call time, block entry time, statement execution time. I'll explain you what all these things are, because these things are kind of things which you have not practiced in your program. So what is program startup time? जब मेरा प्रोग्राम एग्जीक्यूशन स्टार्ट होता है तो हमने बोला था सी प्रोग्राम मेन फंक्शन से एग्जीक्यूशन स्टार्ट करेगा, राइट? सो मेन फंक्शन का कोड आपको रीड करना है और उसको एक स्टेप एट अ टाइम करके एग्जीक्यूट करना है। ये करते वक्त इनिशियली जो आपने वेरिएबल स्टोर किए हैं, जो लोड हो चुके हैं मेमोरी में, उनके वैल्यूज जो है, उनका जो नेम एसोसिएशन है, वो क्या होगा, कैसे होगा, दीज ऑल डिसीजंस आर टेकन एट द टाइम ऑफ प्रोग्राम स्टार्टअप। जब प्रोग्राम शुरू होता है एग्जीक्यूशन, उससे पहले कुछ आपको इनिशियलाइजेशंस करने पड़ते हैं एज अ एग्जीक्यूटर ऑफ द प्रोग्राम। प्रोग्राम एग्जीक्यूट करते समय जो होते हैं, दैट वी आर रेफरिंग टू एज स्टार्टअप टाइम बाइंडिंग। Okay, runtime binding done at program startup time. Now, module entry time. What do you mean by module entry time? Say, suppose my program is divided into certain कोड मॉड्यूल, कोड ब्लॉक्स के एक फंक्शनैलिटी एक ब्लॉक बनाए। फॉर इंस्टेंस से सपोज आपने एक लाइब्रेरी मैनेजमेंट सिस्टम डिजाइन किया है जिसमें दो मॉड्यूल्स है, एक एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन मॉड्यूल है और दूसरा मॉड्यूल है जहां पे लाइब्रेरियन बुक को इश्यू करता है। ओके, सो एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन मॉड्यूल कब इन्वोक होगा? जब एडमिनिस्ट्रेटर लॉग इन करेगा तब वो इन्वोक होगा। ओके, सो एंड व्हेन द एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन मॉड्यूल स्टार्ट्स एग्जीक्यूटिंग, उससे पहले वो जो एडमिनिस्ट्रेटर है उसका आप लॉगिन क्रेडेंशियल्स चेक करोगे, वो वैलिड पर्सन है जो एडमिनिस्ट्रेटर लॉगिन कर रहा है, उसका यूजर नेम पासवर्ड करेक्ट है या नहीं, that you will see, right? So all those things that happen at the time of entry to the module, and now module starts executing, that is referred to as module entry time binding decisions. Elaboration, ये word का मतलब होता है when you are executing a particular module. So module entry means you are entering the module. Module elaboration is when you are executing the module. One module may have different subroutines. So you may be calling a subroutine or a function from a module, and that function जब कॉल करते हो तो आपको कॉन्टेक्स्ट स्विच करना पड़ेगा। यानी आपको कोई वेरिएबल जो आपके करंट स्कोप में है, करंट डिक्लेयर्ड वेरिएबल है जो आप यूज कर रहे हो, वो उनका यूज आपको रोकना पड़ेगा, and then you need to load the variables which are defined as part of the subroutine. Okay, so we'll be looking at what do you mean by scope. अभी तक हमने डिस्कशन में ये वर्ड जो है स्कोप, उसका यूज नहीं किया है, although we had noted what do the scope mean. Okay, scope means कब तक एसोसिएशन, ये जो बाइंडिंग है वो कब तक लाइव रहेगा, बाइंडिंग नेम और उसके एंटिटी का कब तक एक दूसरे के साथ एसोसिएटेड रहेगा, दैट इज डिफाइंड बाय द स्कोप। ओके, तो हम लोग बहुत बार वेरिएबल के स्कोप के बारे में बोलते हैं कि जब मैं एक फंक्शन में एक वेरिएबल यूज करता हूं और उसी नाम का वेरिएबल मेरे ओरिजिनल कॉलिंग फंक्शन में यूज करता हूं, तो बहुत बार there is conflict between these names. Okay, to avoid these conflicts, programming languages have their own mechanism to do context switch. तो context switch क्या करता है, जो मेरा calling function है उसके जो variables है उनको सेव करके रखता है अलग जगह पे, जिसको बोला जाता है stack, and then you load new variable in a different memory location altogether, so that now whatever operations you are doing, they are worked up or they are done on the local copy of the variable, and that is called as, so that sort of decisions जो बनते हैं, और उसी वजह से जो नेम और ऑब्जेक्ट का एसोसिएशन टूटता है, जब मैं सेव कर देता हूं, बोलता हूं मैं प्राइमरी मेमोरी से बाहर स्टैक मेमोरी में मैं जाके सेव करता हूं, ये जब मैं बोलता हूं तब वो वेरिएबल का नाम और उसका जो फिजिकल लोकेलिटी है मेमोरी में, उनका डिसोसिएशन हो रहा है फॉर टाइम बीइंग व्हेन आई एम एक्चुअली going to execute the subroutine, because the subroutine also has same named variable. Now the name that I will be using will be the name of the variable inside the subroutine. तो ये नया एसोसिएशन क्रिएट हो गया उसी नाम का दूसरे फिजिकल लोकेशन के साथ, जिसमें अलग कुछ वैल्यूज कैलकुलेट होंगे, स्टोर होंगे, अपडेट होंगे, जब तक मेरा सबरूटीन एग्जीक्यूट हो रहा है। Okay, so that is referred to as subroutine call time binding. So once I do a binding, I may also require to unbind some other thing or other object as well, जैसा ये सिनारियो में मैंने एक्सप्लेन किया है आपको. ओके, नेक्स्ट इज ब्लॉक एंट्री टाइम. ब्लॉक एंट्री यानी कोड ब्लॉक के अंदर मैं घुस रहा हूँ. कभी कभार आप सब रूटीन नहीं लिखते, ये बहुत कम बार आपने यूज किया होगा, लेकिन सी प्रोग्राम के अंदर में फंक्शन ना लिखते हुए भी ब्लॉक ऑफ कोड लिख सकता हूँ. इसका एग्जाम्पल मैं अगले लेक्चर में आपको दूंगा. And then you will understand what does I mean by saying that block entry time binding. Finally, there could be statement execution time, some binding required to be done when I'm executing certain statement as well. जैसा पॉइंटर को डीरेफरेंस करना, ये जो होता है ये एग्जीक्यूशन टाइम पे होता है एक स्टेटमेंट के. स्टार ptr, so star ptr get the content of the address to which the pointer is pointing to. ये जो एसोसिएशन होता है वैल्यू का यहाँ पे विद दैट पर्टिकुलर नेम स्टार ptr, दैट इज डन एट द एग्जीक्यूशन ऑफ दैट पर्टिकुलर स्टेटमेंट. तो ये बाइंडिंग होगा स्टेटमेंट एग्जीक्यूशन टाइम का बाइंडिंग. सो ऑल दीज concept would come under runtime binding, because all these decisions will be taken place when you are running the code, when you are executing the code. Okay,